Have you ever stood in a crowd, the bass thumping in your chest, the guitars wailing, and found your eyes drawn not to the lead singer or the flamboyant guitarist, but to the figure slightly off to the side? The one who seems to be the anchor, the quiet engine driving the whole machine forward. Rock and roll history is littered with these unsung heroes, the musical architects who, without the glare of the main spotlight, shape the very sound and soul of a legendary band. They are the secret weapon, the missing ingredient, the steady hand on the tiller in a storm of egos and Marshall stacks. Today we delve into the life of one such man, a musician's musician, a quiet professional whose journey took him from the smoky jazz clubs of post-war Britain to the roaring stadiums of America. He was the man who completed the puzzle for one of hard rock's most iconic and influential bands, adding layers of color, melody, and sophistication to their raw power. We're talking about the great Paul Martin Raymond, the keyboardist and rhythm guitarist for the legendary British band UFO. His story isn't one of tabloid scandals or rock and roll cliché. It's a deeper, more resonant tale of dedication, quiet brilliance, and a lifelong love affair with music that saw him performing quite literally until his final days. It's a story that culminates in one of the most poignant and fitting final acts in rock history, a testament to a man who truly lived and died for his craft. So grab your headphones, turn up the volume, and let's explore the life of the man who helped give UFO its wings. To truly appreciate the musician Paul Raymond would become, we have to transport ourselves back to the world he was born into. Britain in the mid-1940s and 50s was a place of stark contrasts. The black and white images of the era show a nation still healing from the wounds of war, a landscape of rationing rubble, and a collective stiff upper lip. But beneath this austere surface, a cultural revolution was simmering. For the generation born into this world, the promise of something more vibrant, more expressive was just over the horizon. The grayness of their parents' world was about to be shattered by the technicolor explosion of the 1960s. Music was the primary catalyst for this change. American rock and roll had arrived like a message from another planet, but it was the raw, emotional power of the blues that truly took root in the fertile soil of British youth culture. Young musicians like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page were obsessively listening to scratchy records by Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, and B.B. King, reinterpreting this American art form with a uniquely British fire and swagger. This was the British blues boom, a movement that started in cramped, sweaty clubs like the Marquee in London and would eventually conquer the world. This was the environment that shaped Paul Raymond, but his musical education wasn't confined to the 12-bar blues. He came to rock and roll through a different, more sophisticated door, jazz. This early grounding in jazz gave him a harmonic vocabulary and a sense of melodic improvisation that set him apart from many of his contemporaries, who had learned their craft from three-chord rock and roll. He understood the power of a well-placed seventh chord, the subtlety of a shifting harmony, the way a delicate melody could weave through a powerful rhythm. This duality, the soul of the blues and the intellect of jazz, would become the hallmark of his style. His professional career began not in a single, explosive moment, but through a steady apprenticeship, moving through a series of bands that were each significant in their own right. He was a member of Plastic Penny, a band that flirted with the psychedelic pop scene of the late 60s. They even scored a UK top 10 hit with a soulful cover of Everything I Am. This experience gave him his first taste of chart success and the whirlwind life of a professional musician in swinging London. But his heart and his prodigious talent soon led him to the more musically demanding world of the blues rock circuit. This is where his story truly begins to intertwine with rock royalty. He joined the formidable blues outfit Chicken Shack, led by the fiery guitarist Stan Webb, and here he faced a truly daunting task. He was the replacement for Christine McVie, who had just departed to join her husband's band, a little group you might have heard of called Fleetwood Mac. Stepping into the shoes of a musician and songwriter as gifted as McVie was no small feat, but Paul proved more than capable, holding down the keyboard duties and contributing to the band's earthy, powerful sound. Life in a band like Chicken Shack was a relentless grind. Endless nights in a transit van, playing smoky clubs up and down the country, honing his craft night after night. It was the ultimate musical education. From there, he made another significant move, joining Savoy Brown. This was a major step up. Savoy Brown, led by the visionary guitarist Kim Simmons, was one of the premier bands of the British blues rock scene, and crucially, they had found massive success in America. For Paul, this was a whole new world. Suddenly, he was no longer playing to a few hundred people in a club in Birmingham. He was playing to thousands in arenas across the United States. He toured America relentlessly with Savoy Brown, experiencing the sheer scale and fanaticism of the U.S. rock scene. This period was invaluable. It seasoned him as a performer, taught him how to command a large stage, and exposed him to the inner workings of the international music business. He had paid his dues, learned from the best, and was now a seasoned, versatile professional, ready for the call that would change his life and solidify his place in the rock and roll pantheon. By 1976, UFO was a band on the brink. They had the raw materials for greatness, the street-smart, poetic lyrics, and charismatic stage presence of frontman Phil Mogg, the rock-solid, inventive rhythm section of bassist Pete Way and drummer Andy Parker, and their ace in the hole, a phenomenal young German guitarist named Michael Schenker, whose fluid, melodic, and lightning-fast playing was already the stuff of legend. They had released a string of solid albums and built a formidable live reputation, particularly in Europe and Japan. But they felt a piece was missing. Their sound, while powerful, lacked a certain sonic breadth. They needed a texture, a color, a layer of melody that could complement Schenker's pyrotechnics and elevate their songs to the next level. Their keyboardist, Danny Peronell, had departed, and the search was on for someone who could fill that role. Enter Paul Raymond. With his extensive experience in the blues rock world and his sophisticated musical sensibilities, he was the perfect candidate. He wasn't just a keyboard player, he was a multi-instrumentalist who could also provide strong rhythm guitar, a crucial element that would thicken the band's live sound and free up Michael Schenker to focus solely on his breathtaking lead work. When Paul joined UFO, it wasn't just a lineup change, it was the final perfect click of a combination lock. The classic UFO lineup was born. His impact was immediate and profound. The first album he recorded with the band was 1977's masterpiece, Lights Out. From the opening moments of the album, you can hear the difference. His keyboards add a new dimension of atmosphere and melody. Listen to the iconic track, Too Hot to Handle. Paul's Hammond organ swells behind the main riff, adding a layer of grit and soul that makes the whole track swing. On the epic title track, Lights Out, his subtle piano and synthesizer lines build the tension, creating a sense of drama that culminates in one of Schenker's most celebrated solos. He also brought a talent for arrangement with his fingerprints all over the gorgeous string sections that grace ballads like Try Me. He wasn't just playing parts. He was helping to compose and arrange the sonic architecture of the songs. He was the secret weapon that turned a great hard rock band into a world-class, sophisticated musical force. The creative and commercial success continued with their next album, 1978's Obsession. By this point, the band was a well-oiled machine, and the chemistry between the 5 members was electric. Paul's role had become even more integrated. His rhythm guitar work provided a solid, chunky foundation for tracks like Only You Can Rock Me, while his keyboard textures on songs like Lookin' Out for No. One Prime added a touch of elegance and melancholy. It was during the Obsession sessions that a little-known incident occurred, perfectly illustrating Paul's quiet but essential role as a musical mediator. The band was working on a particular song, but Michael Schenker, a notorious perfectionist and a somewhat volatile personality, was struggling to find the right emotional tone for the guitar solo. The pressure was mounting, studio time was being wasted, and frustration was growing. While others might have argued or grown impatient, Paul took a different approach. He sat down with Michael at the keyboards and began to play a series of chord progressions, not telling him what to play, but creating a harmonic mood, a musical space for Michael to explore. This gentle guidance, this musical conversation unlocked something in Schenker. He went on to record a solo that was both technically brilliant and emotionally devastating, and it became a highlight of the album. This was Paul Raymond's modus operandi. No ego, no drama, just a deep musicality and an innate understanding of how to serve the song and bring out the best in his bandmates. This golden era reached its zenith with the release of their legendary 1979 live album, Strangers in the Night. Often hailed as one of the greatest live recordings of all time. Alongside classics like Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous and The Who's Live at Leeds, this album perfectly captured the raw power, musical telepathy, and uncontainable energy of UFO on stage. And Paul Raymond was absolutely central to that sound. His ability to switch seamlessly between chunky rhythm guitar and soaring keyboard melodies was the glue that held the live performance together. He was recreating the complex, layered sound of their studio albums in a live setting, a task that required immense skill and concentration. On Strangers in the Night, you can hear him driving the rhythm on Doctor Doctor, adding the haunting organ melody to Rock Bottom, and providing the delicate piano touches on I'm a Loser. It is the definitive document of a band at the absolute peak of its powers, and Paul Raymond is at the very heart of it. Of course, in the volatile world of rock and roll, peaks are often followed by valleys. The very creative tensions that made UFO so brilliant also made the band inherently unstable. Following the Strangers in the Night tour, the mercurial Michael Schenker departed to form his own band. This was a seismic blow to UFO, and it wasn't long before Paul, who had formed a strong musical bond with Schenker, also decided to leave. He joined the newly formed Michael Schenker Group, MSG, contributing his signature keyboards and guitar to their classic debut album. This move demonstrated his loyalty, but also his desire to continue working in a creatively stimulating environment. The 1980s saw Paul embark on a variety of projects. He reunited with his old friend Pete Way in the band Wasted, a more straightforward, hard-rocking outfit. He also formed his own group, the Paul Raymond Project, which allowed him to step into the spotlight as a frontman and primary songwriter, exploring his own musical vision. These years were a testament to his resilience and his enduring love for making music. He wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He was constantly creating, collaborating, and performing. But the siren song of UFO was never far away. Over the ensuing decades, Paul would return to the band on multiple occasions. He was a key part of the celebrated reunion of the classic lineup for the 1995 album Walk on Water, and from the early 2000s until the very end, he was a permanent, stabilizing fixture in the band. As other members came and went, Paul Raymond remained. He was the keeper of the flame, the vital link to the band's golden era. For the fans who flocked to see UFO year after year, seeing Paul on stage, effortlessly switching between his Les Paul and his keyboards, was a comforting and essential part of the experience. He was the quiet constant, the professional who could always be counted on to deliver. To understand the man behind the music, you have to look past the stage lights and the gold records. Paul Raymond was, by all accounts, the quintessential English gentleman. In a world of oversized egos and rock star theatrics, he was known for his dry wit, his calm demeanor, and his unwavering professionalism. He was the calm in the eye of the UFO hurricane. While bandmates like Pete Way were legendary for their offstage antics, Paul was the consummate pro, the one who made sure the musical side of things was always locked in. In interviews, he came across as thoughtful, articulate, and refreshingly devoid of ego. He spoke of his bandmates with affection, even during times of turmoil, and he always put the music first. There's a wonderful quote from him where he was asked about the often chaotic nature of the band. He simply said, "It's a rock and roll band. It's supposed to be a bit of a soap opera, but when you get on stage and the lights go down, none of that matters. It's just about the music." That simple statement perfectly encapsulates his entire philosophy. His long-term partner, Sandra, was a constant presence in his life, and their relationship provided an anchor of stability in the often transient world of a touring musician. Friends and fellow musicians described him as a loyal friend, a man of his word, and someone whose quiet confidence was reassuring. He wasn't the life of the party, but he was the soul of the band. He preferred a good book and a quiet conversation to a backstage rampage. This grounded nature is perhaps why he was able to navigate the treacherous waters of the music industry for over 50 years with his integrity and his passion intact. He saw it as a job, the best job in the world, and he treated it with the respect and dedication it deserved. This isn't to say he was a pushover. He had a quiet strength and a firm belief in his own musical contributions. He fought for his ideas in the studio and was an integral part of the songwriting process. Even if he didn't always get the lion's share of the credit, his emotional depth was channeled not into dramatic outbursts, but into his playing. The melancholic piano melody, the soulful organ swell, the perfectly placed guitar chord. He communicated his feelings through his fingers, and for those who truly listened, his voice was one of the most eloquent in the band. The story of Paul Raymond isn't filled with the kind of controversies that make for sensationalist headlines. He wasn't arrested, he didn't trash hotel rooms, and he didn't engage in public feuds. The controversy, if you can call it that, is a more subtle and in many ways more profound one. The historical debate over his level of recognition. In the grand narrative of rock history, the spotlight inevitably falls on the flamboyant singer and the virtuosic lead guitarist. And in a band that featured the undeniable star power of Phil Mogg and the guitar pyrotechnics of Michael Schenker, it was perhaps inevitable that Paul's contributions would be somewhat overshadowed. This raises a fascinating and ongoing debate in music history. How do we properly value the role of the multi-instrumentalist, the arranger, the musical anchor? Is the architect of a building less important than the decorative sculpture out front? Paul Raymond was UFO's musical architect. He built the sonic foundations, designed the harmonic spaces, and added the crucial details that turned a powerful structure into a beautiful and enduring piece of art. Without his keyboards, the sound of classic UFO is unimaginable. Without his rhythm guitar, their live show would have lost a significant portion of its power. The historical debate, then, is about reevaluating his significance. It's about looking back at those classic albums and actively listening for his parts, recognizing how his melodic lines intertwine with the vocals, how his chord choices underpin the guitar solos, how his subtle textures create the mood. For decades, he was perhaps the most underrated musician in one of hard rock's most underrated bands. The renewed appreciation for his work in recent years is a welcome and long overdue correction of the historical record. He may not have been the face of the band, but there is a strong argument to be made that he was its heart and soul. The long-term impact of Paul Raymond's work is twofold. First, there is his direct and undeniable impact on the legacy of UFO. He was the key ingredient that transformed them from a good hard rock band into a truly great one. His musical sophistication elevated their songwriting and gave them a unique sonic identity that set them apart from their peers. Bands like Iron Maiden, Metallica, Def Leppard, and countless others have cited UFO as a primary influence, and the sound they were influenced by was the sound that Paul Raymond was so instrumental in creating. Steve Harris of Iron Maiden has been famously effusive in his praise for UFO, and you can hear their melodic sensibilities and dual guitar harmonies as a direct evolution of what UFO, with Paul's contributions, was doing in the late 70s. Beyond UFO, Paul's career had a broader cultural significance. He represented a specific archetype of musician that was crucial to the development of hard rock and heavy metal. By seamlessly integrating keyboards into a guitar-driven format, he helped to pave the way for a more melodic and musically adventurous style of heavy music. He demonstrated that keyboards didn't have to be soft. They could be powerful, dramatic, and integral to a heavy sound. Bands in the 80s, from Journey and Foreigner to the European power metal scene, owe a debt to pioneers like Paul Raymond, who broadened the sonic palette of rock music. In 2019, UFO embarked on what they announced would be their definitive farewell tour. They gave it a name that was so perfectly wryly British, the Last Orders Tour. For anyone who's ever been in an English pub, the phrase is instantly familiar. It's the call from the bartender that signals the end of the night, a final chance to get one more round in with your friends before you head home. It's a call that's tinged with a little sadness that the night is over, but also filled with the warmth of shared experience. That's exactly what this tour felt like. It wasn't a funeral procession. It was a joyous, raucous, 50-year celebration. They played a series of triumphant, emotional shows across the UK and Ireland, a final homecoming to bid farewell to the fans who had grown up with them, the ones who had supported them for half a century. And Paul, at 73 years old, was there on stage every single night. Think about that for a moment. At an age when most are long retired, he was still hauling his gear, sound checking in empty arenas, and then, when the lights went down, playing with the same ferocious energy and delicate passion he'd had as a young man in the smoky clubs of the 1970s. From his vantage point behind the keyboards, he would have looked out and seen not just a sea of faces, but a tapestry of his own life. The teenagers who bought Lights Out on vinyl, now there with their own children, all singing along to words and melodies he helped create. On April 5th, 2019, the band played the final show of that tour leg at the Kentish Town Forum in London. The energy was electric, a potent mix of celebration and poignant finality. The tour was a massive, unqualified success, a fitting send-off for one of Britain's most beloved rock legends. Then came the quiet. For just over a week, the roar of the crowd was replaced by the calm of home. Paul was back with his partner, Sandra, likely decompressing, nursing the aches that come from life on the road, but filled with the profound satisfaction of a job well and truly done. Then, just over a week later, on April 13th, the news broke like a thunderclap, sending shockwaves through the rock community. Paul Raymond had passed away suddenly from a heart attack. The timing was almost unbelievable, imbued with a kind of tragic, poetic perfection that no scriptwriter could have dared to invent. He had just finished his last run of shows with the band he had dedicated so much of his life to. He had taken his final bow not in a hospital bed, but metaphorically, on the stage, under the lights. He had given his all to his music, right up to the very end. He didn't fade away into a quiet retirement. He went out at the absolute top of his game, his ears still ringing with the sound of thousands of adoring fans. It was the ultimate, almost mythical embodiment of the phrase, dying with your boots on. The most touching and perhaps most important detail came from his partner, Sandra, who in her moment of profound grief shared a message of incredible grace. She let the world know that Paul's last days had been happy ones, and that he had died a happy man, basking in the glow of a wildly successful tour. That single sentiment transforms the narrative. It reframes a sudden tragedy into the triumphant final act of a life lived without regret, a life spent doing exactly what he was put on this earth to do. As we look back on the life of Paul Raymond, what remains is a profound and unshakable sense of respect and admiration. He was a musician of immense talent and versatility, a man whose quiet contributions had a massive and lasting impact. In the often turbulent soap opera that was UFO, he was the steady hand, the musical conscience, the unsung hero. His story is a powerful reminder that greatness isn't always measured in volume or headlines or the number of magazine covers. Sometimes true greatness is found in the subtle, unforgettable melody you can't get out of your head, in the perfectly voiced chord that makes the hair on your arms stand up, in the quiet, unwavering dedication of a lifetime spent in service to a song. So next time you put on Strangers in the Night or Lights Out, do something a little different. Listen for the warm swell of the Hammond organ, the delicate touch of the piano, the solid driving rhythm of the guitar, holding it all together. In those notes, you will hear the true, enduring voice of Paul Raymond. You'll hear the soul of UFO,